So you will have seen in the news that France and then Britain and now Canada are saying that they're looking to recognise Palestine as a state. Whatever the hell that means and whatever that will mean practically, I have no idea. But for whatever reason, they think that a Palestinian state will somehow solve the conflict. I genuinely wonder, do they think this in their heart of hearts, or are they saying this to please some kind of demographic among their voting base? But Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of a Hamas co-founder, who I'm sure many of you know well, put out a statement, a tweet recently, which said it so perfectly, and I put it into a graphic for JTV. He said October 7th didn't happen because Palestinians, quote unquote, were denied a state. It happened because they were given one. So perfectly summarized, and this is what I simply cannot understand. Gaza was the litmus test for a Palestinian state. Israel left Israel left the territory of Gaza and said, let's create a mini Palestinian state, a statelet, in the borders of Gaza as a gesture for peace and as a trial run for a two-state solution. And then people say, yeah, well, you blockaded it and you did all these terrible things, so of course... No. Israel didn't. They gave them all the infrastructure, the buildings, the greenhouses, the infrastructure. Millions and billions of dollars in international aid was injected into Gaza in 2005 to help them make a success of it. There was so much excitement, and from day one, they chose terror. The people of Gaza elected Hamas. Hamas created a death cult, terrorist infrastructure, teaching their kids, raising their kids, rearing them to become Jew haters, to be willing destroyers of the state of Israel. And of course, they literally did that and raised a generation of that. So 18 years later, you had October 7th. With young Gazans who had been raised on this very diet of Jew hatred. So the notion that you do gestures for peace, you give the land, Israel leaves, that's somehow going to lead to peace. The opposite is true. And it's been shown time and again in history. And if people are so blind to the reality that the Palestinian cause is not about genuine desire for statehood, which is why Mossab says Palestinians in quotes, because really they don't care about being a unique identity. They see themselves as part of the Arab world, and they wouldn't care to be conquered by another Arab or Islamic country. They've shown us time and again what they're interested in is destroying the Jews. So it would be the most absurd rewarding of terrorism, rewarding of the anti-Israel Palestinian cause, to say, in the aftermath of Israel trying to get back its hostages, defeat the modern-day Nazis of Hamas, because they're taking too long, we're now going to reward Hamas on the other side and say, unless Israel stops, you're going to get a Palestinian state. And the incentives, by the way, are so messed up here. You're basically telling Israel, you're saying, this is what Keir Starmer's saying, if you don't stop fighting, I'm going to recognise a Palestinian state. What does that tell Hamas? Are Hamas going to think, well, you now incentivized us to stop the fighting, to stop engineering starvation and not distributing aid? No, you're incentivizing them to make the situation worse, to tie Israel's hands, just hold on for another month. And then they get their Palestinian state recognised. It is so twisted, it's beyond belief. Mossab said on X, he said as follows, he said 150 plus countries recognise a state without a nation and deny a nation without a state. Who is more worthy of recognition, the Tibetans or the Palestinians? He said the UK is to recognise a Palestinian state unless Israel ends war and commits to peace. How about no Palestinian state unless Palestinians release the hostages, elect a moderate leadership, drop their violence, hand over those who planned and participated in war crimes, and apologise to the Jewish people? Before proposing a state, we need to know who are the Palestinians. Are they jihadists, communists, con artists, mafia savages, rapists? How can anyone propose a state without being able to know who would run it? And another important question, on what land? What's the capital? What's the constitution? Pleasing Muslim voters in the UK and France at the expense of another democracy is rude, provocative, and it will not bring peace. For those who want to say Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the PA, he's a moderate, well, have a watch of this, where he says, they say Hitler killed the Jews for being Jews. Not true. It's because of their role in society, usury, money, and so on.
والحقيقة التي يجب أن نوضحها للعالم أن يهود أوروبا ليسوا ساميين ولا علاقة لهم بالسامية. فقد بدأت القصة في عام 900 ميلادي. 900 ميلادي. وفي مملكة الخزر.
Okay, so he goes on a very long rant here, so I don't want to keep you for this whole thing. But that's effectively what he says. I want to get to the part where he talks about the 1930s. But you should know, by the way, that Abbas did his PhD on in a Russian university on the collaboration between the Zionists and Hitler. That was his PhD. By the way, if you want to watch this full video where he says all of this, just go on to Hillel Neuer's X account. But this is who we're dealing with. The one that has a pay-for-slay system. Terrorists that kill Jews inside of Israel, he will pay their families while the terrorists are in jail. Do you understand how sick this is? This is meant to be the moderate that we're dealing with. It's not a moderate at all. He is a Jew-hater. And by the way, this notion that that they think the Jews aren't the real Jews, I actually think that is what's fueling a lot of this. If they were to truly understand that, no, we really are the Jews of old, the Jews of the Torah, I actually think that could really turn the tide. A lot of Muslims think that Israel is some kind of phony, imported, Western, secular, liberal, democratic state. But if we get more and more in touch with our roots and talk about our right to be there as divine right, and we really are the Jews of old, Europe was just a temporary place, but we go back further, back to Judea. I think that could really turn the tide. But we have to have the confidence and the clarity to say that, just as they have the confidence to state their case. And as I say, you don't need to dig deep to understand that the Palestinian side, they tell us, if you just listen, what they're really interested in. Here's Mossab Hassan Youssef explaining this.
We are not Palestinians. The children who are born there are not Palestinians. When I was born with a Jordanian birth certificate. Our ethnicity, Arabians, even though we may not even qualify to that, because we are a mix. But let's say respectfully that we are Arabs. And Palestinian is a political ideology that was of a strange combination made by the Muslim Brotherhood, the KGB, the Romans, the British mandate, and somehow Yasser Arafat adapted this ideology, and the ideology is like a snowball, just kept developing into this very strange entity that has in it the Islamist, the communist, the all type of strange ideologies, not even one thing. And all of it is aiming at the destruction of Israel, or at least, those who say the Palestinian Authority does not want to destroy Israel. Then I say, what does it mean actually to go on a global assault, delegitimizing Israel systematically for many, many years? Right. What does that mean? What it means to, in principle, delegitimize Israel, this is the first step. And so the Palestinian Authority, under the umbrella of Palestine, is doing this type of terrorism. And Hamas, under the umbrella of Palestine, is doing committing genocide against the Jewish people. And they're playing that this is the good cup and this is the bad cup. And let's go into their rabbit hole. And what I say, no, let's get to the surface. Tell me, what makes you a Palestinian? Define Palestine. And this has been my work for the past few months, that I want to take it to square one. We must define Palestine. If Palestine is not a nation or ethnic group, if it's only an ideology, then we need to understand your constitution. What do you stand for? What do you want? Is your objective to build a Palestinian state, or your objective to destroy the state of Israel? Because as long as the various Palestinian groups conflicted among each other, that one party want this and one party want the opposite extreme, then how can we figure them out? How can we negotiate with them? Because they don't have a legitimate leadership that agree on national agenda. Plus, they don't have a nation. It's not a nation. It's political gangs and tribes that extremely conflicted. So with that said, when people come and try to force a Palestinian state, who is going to rule that state? Who's going to be in charge of it? And are they accountable leadership to their people? Are they responsible? Or tomorrow they are going to use their own children as human shields again? If they cannot be trusted with their own children, how can I trust them with statehood? Up to this point, they just proved to be irresponsible gamblers who gambled with children's blood.
Absolutely. He says it so clearly and succinctly. And, you know, I'm reminded actually of a verse in the Torah that you know, when he speaks about the fact that who even are they as a people? What kind of a people are they? I did a video recently where I spoke about how each verse in the Torah actually corresponds to a year in creation. And as we get to the time that we're in today, and I showed, by the way, how like the year of the state of Israel's rebirth talks about God saying, I'll gather you in from all the four corners of the earth. The verse connected to the Holocaust talks about the hidden things are only known to God, and about, you know, how can we understand suffering? Amazing stuff. When you start to get to the years of ones that we're in, it's towards the very end of the Torah, and Moses is giving his final speech, and he's talking about the future. And what does he say will happen? God says they have provoked my jealousy with a non-God, in other words, gone astray, worshipping things other than me, provoked my anger with their vanities. You know, thus I will provoke their jealousy with a non-people, provoke their anger with a foolish nation. It talks about a non-people. In the Hebrew, it's belo'am. I would say to you, dear viewer, that, goodness me, that is the perfect description of the Palestinians. And listen to what's described here. From outside, the sword will bereave, and terror from within. Young men and maidens suckling babies with venerable elders. Is that not a description of what we saw on October 7th? But what's amazing is that if you keep reading, you'll see that God says, I will not forsake them, and I will bring justice. He said, you may ask, how can one pursue 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight? Unless their mighty rock had sold them out and the Lord has given them over. In other words, let them not think that God, as he says over here, the enemy will claim, our hand was triumphant, the Lord did none of this. You know, they might claim that, that, you know, either that they're successful and look how successful we are, or that God is not with the Jews. But then it goes on to where God reassures them that he is with his people. And I just find this remarkable, reassuring, but should also give us the confidence and strength to say the truth clearly, to turn away from vanities, and state clearly that just as the Palestinian cause is based on a non-people and a non-agenda, not a legitimate agenda, it's just about hatred, so too we should state that the Jewish people are in the land and have the rights to the land, not because of historical rights or even legal rights or even capturing it in war, but because this land belongs to us as ordained by God. I'm telling you that this kind of shift, just as the other side, are purely ideological and purely non-compromising, so too we have to do the same, but on the other side, the side for good and for truth. Now, before we finish, one of the things that I've been trying to hammer home is understanding exactly what Mossab is telling us, that the Palestinian cause is not based on a legitimate grievance and desire for statehood, And the evidence of that, among many pieces of evidence, is that the hatred towards the Jews predated Israel's rebirth, which proves it's not about something Israel's done. And we have a new documentary all about Arab anti-Semitism before Israel's re-establishment. I'll show you the trailer now, and you can watch it by clicking the link in the description below. Picture yourself. It's 1834, and you're a Jew living in Tzfat, which is a northern city in Israel, then under the Ottoman Empire. Your family is part of this ancient city's spiritual heart for generations. You study Torah, you trade in the market, and live quietly among your Arab neighbours. But one day, a mob storms your street, shouting, "Kill the Jews!" Your home is looted, your synagogue burned, your loved ones beaten. This isn't about Israel. Israel won't exist for 114 years. This isn't about settlements, the IDF, or the 1948 displacements. This is raw, violent hatred aimed at you for being a Jew. And it's not just in Palestine, it's part of a centuries-old story of anti-Semitism woven into Arab and Islamic history from the dawn of Islam to the streets of Hebron. The claim that this conflict began with Israel's creation, the Nakba, or modern policies, is a farce, a distortion that collapses under history's magnifying glass. Welcome to JTV+. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and today we're uncovering a history too often buried, the relentless anti-Semitism among Arabs in Palestine before 1948, rooted in a broader Arab and Muslim hostility that began with Islam's inception in the 7th century. To watch this JTV+ documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.